Welcome to Biztech's Enterprise Technology Show, the show where we feature tech companies across Asia talking about their solutions and how they make a difference to their customers' businesses. Today, we feature Cisco, the US technology giant. And here to tell us more is Bidhan Roy, the Managing Director of Commercial Enterprise and Mid-Market Segment, APJC at Cisco. Welcome to the show, Bidhan.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me.
Bidhan, it's a pleasure. Now, can you start by giving our audience an overview of Cisco and your business and operations across the Asia-Pacific region?
Sure, thank you. That's a great question because I'll tell you why it is, because a lot of people do know about Cisco as to what we do, but there are certain probably viewers who may not know the specifics of it and what we exactly have achieved precisely in the last few years. So let me get started giving across a definition of what I do as a role. So I lead what we call the commercial enterprise and mid-market in Asia Pacific, Japan, and China. And just imagine this is a customer segment which is the most critical for us, given the kind of a digital transformation that's going on. But most importantly, these are kind of customers who are absolutely in the crux of what we are seeing today, what transformation that's happening. So take out just 10 to 15 or 20 customers, the top customers in a particular country. Rest of it is all about commercial enterprise and mid-market as we talk about. Now, let me get started giving a little bit of an overview of to what Cisco is about. And I'd probably like to get started with a little higher level as to what's our purpose. Our purpose is predominantly powering a more inclusive and sustainable future for all. And when you actually unpack this, you would find everything's pivoted around broadly these four things. Number one, which is about how do we evolve or reimagine our customers' experience throughout the technology journey. Number two, that comes to what we do it on a daily basis, is that how do we work with government leaders so that we can really power an inclusive future through trust. Number three for us is we work very closely with our partners to ensure that we deliver the best outcomes, both to our partners and our customers. And fourth, which is the last one, but definitely not the least, which is about leading a conscious culture within our employees. And there are various vectors of it. It could be inclusion, diversity, its impacts to the community, or the activities that we do related to Network Academy or Global Problem Solver Challenge and those kind of things. The trivia now is that a lot of people may not know that we as an organization, close to 51% of our business comes in from software and services. What people usually know is that we are one of the biggest IT company, a networking company, but people do not know that we are also one of the biggest software companies in the world.
You know, Bidhan, that's interesting. So 51%, I'm from the era where we think of Cisco as switches and routers.
There you go. So I have got one person to change the perception about us.
So then now, one of the things is because your reach has been overarching in terms of helping your customers across the region, the pandemic has changed a lot of things. It's accelerated digital transformation, not only across the region, across different sectors as well. How have you as a tech company been impacted by that shift to a digital first strategy?
Good question. So I think it is very, very clear by any metric or any measure that the world has changed forever, right? So just imagine close to 2 years back around this time, we were all grappling with trade wars and tariff wars, and we were talking about things that impacted macroeconomic situations, which are probably a little bit situational. But what this pandemic has done is that it has brought in seismic shifts, which are very systemic in nature. Just to sum it up in one word, it has completely changed the way we work, how we live, the role of businesses, how we learn, how we play, and the whole expectations of consumers around the globe has completely shifted. But having said that, there is one silver lining to all of this. And if pandemic has delivered one good thing or one positive thing amongst a lot of negatives, and that is about that technology has become the front and center of any business today. Every company is a technology company first. Just imagine what happened to multiple verticals, like, for example, retail. there are two sides to this story, right? There are some retail companies who could not pivot and embrace technology. They did really bad. There are some retail companies who absolutely embrace technology, and that's where they are. Now, coming back to the specific of what you asked, that what has really impacted us, to a greater extent, we knew this remote working because close to 40% of our global employees were working remotely. So we knew as to what does it take. But what we did not know to that magnitude is that how do you really ingrain it on a daily life? Because most of us, or many of us, have not gone back to offices in the last 20 months. So how does companies really bring it across to their culture? And core of it is something that we quickly learned, and we started impacting to our customers, our partners, and started sharing our practices and what is really can be taken across. So these are some of the primarily two things that we did.
And Bidhan, that's you hit the nail on the head. Companies like whether it's Cisco or whether it's some of your large enterprise competitors have been doing this for 20 years. It's nothing new. So one of the things is being early adopters, you all have the advantage and practical know-how to help the customers then in terms of their execution.
So the way we embraced it across is that what we tend to usually forget is that it is not that the technology, which is only the critical component, but what is also goes hand in hand with it, the culture part of it. There were a lot of companies who had never experienced any amount of remote working when we started off in February, March last year when the pandemic all began. Now they were thrown into this particular thing of really embracing it and going for it and trying to do things which is not of a general order to them. And at the same point of time, the business expectations were pretty high. So many, not just technologists, but business leaders faced across significant challenges to drive a culture which is about remote working or hybrid working at the best. So those are certain very significant challenges that came by. And very happy to say that today, a lot of companies have started embracing it. There are no choices about it. We just got to go into this remote hybrid working and continue to drive the focus.
And can you share with us, Bidhan, some of the customer success stories that you've been able to help over the last 20 months to transform their businesses perhaps, or even then go into new businesses because you've worked with them?
Yeah, sure. So, Brian, what has happened in the last few months is that the kind of priorities that customers had pre-COVID has changed quite a bit. I would probably say that it was changing, but this pandemic gave across a significant accelerator to it. Now, if you would imagine, there's a lot of CXOs today have started reimagining their applications. It's about how they design it, how they develop it. It's not anymore about that, okay, this is what I delivered to you as a customer and you do not know what to do about it. Even employees utilize so much of applications. So that's become forefront as to how CXOs think. The second thing that the CXOs are really going in their head is about how do they power this hybrid work that's coming across. Now, this is not a small thing because as I just talked about it goes like this, that work is no more a place you go. It's something that what you do from anywhere. And that has to be ingrained in everything that we do. The third thing that also goes in is that with all these activities that's happening, which is remote or hybrid work, you got to, as an organization, one got to really transform their infrastructure and ensure that it is secure, because there's a lot of cybersecurity threats that's coming in. So keeping this in mind, there's some of the examples that we have worked with is we have worked very closely with some of the educational institutes in multiple countries across Asia Pacific, Japan and China, to bring across cybersecurity at the forefront. Now, initially, it was really not taken across in a very highly important manner, but now people do understand why education platforms need to be very secure, because you are dealing with kids, you are dealing with students of young age, and the list goes on. It's a lot of healthcare companies, a lot of retail companies, as to how we brought in technology to the forefront so that people can reach out to their customers. I'll just close it out by saying that there is one thing that has made a significant change in this particular pandemic is that now organizations need to understand that they need to cater to their customers wherever they are. So it is about the product or the solution that you offer, but the channel or the go-to-market is something that the customer decides. And you need to be really present across all the go-to-market so that you can offer them the best of the solutions or products.
And Bidhan, in order to do that, it's all about cloud, whether it's a hybrid cloud or whatever forms that it basically takes. Now, Cisco did a white paper with the Boston Consulting Group about the future of cloud in the Asia Pacific region. I think it just came out last month. Could you share some key takeaways from that study?
Oh, love to. Yes, we did that. And we all know that how and what kind of an impetus this particular pandemic has offered to cloud. I think it goes without saying that every other company is today already in cloud or deciding as to how they move into cloud and different forms of it, as you rightly called it out, hybrid, public, private. There are key takeaways that report talked about, which was number one is that the shift is not going to be easy, because we do know that while a lot of people are jumping into it as a technology, but what's need to be understood is the adoption of it and how much you consume and what value, real business value that it delivers. That's number one. The second thing that came out very clearly is that even though a lot of people jumping into it, it's not one size that fits all. We need to understand as to what, as an organization, what is my priority and how does this technology fit into. So we need to bring across our deliverables as an organization, customer at the center of it, and wrap it around with the technology or the cloud. The third one is that there are different kinds of cloud adoption archetypes that's been identified. Some of them would really adopt it depending upon the processes that I have in place. Some of them probably will take a much longer time because of the maturity of the industry. And that takes me to the fourth one, which was about cloud adoption is really split into 4 distinct stages. It's all about that. Are you really in an adopt stage, which is very initially picking things up, or are you just experimenting with things? Or are you really scaling out and operating at a very, very high scale level? And finally, last but not the least, which is that it is the enterprise which will drive the cloud agenda for the future. And the reason why I keep saying this particular thing, because we need to keep customers at the center of every technology decision that we take. We should not be just jumping in for a technology decision because it's cool.
One of the key things, and you're right, because it's all about business outcomes at the end of the day, customer intimacy as well. So we did at Biztech a conversation with the CIO Association of India, which did a survey on the financial services industry. One of the key takeaways from that, and I'm sure they all use Cisco products, is the fact that customer intimacy and knowledge has gone up exponentially because the cloud has enabled them as customers then move away from physical brick and mortar engagement with the banks to full digital. The bank starts to then know more about the customers themselves and therefore can serve the customers better.
So very rightly put, and I can give across some examples. Like yesterday in the same market, I was in a part of the panel which was wherein few startup companies came in and presented about as to what kind of work that they're doing especially in financial services industry. So I think all of us do reckon the fact, the kind of benefits and opportunity cloud brings across, it's absolutely undeniable. It brings across greater efficiency, cost savings, enhanced security, resiliency, and various other things. But what we also need to keep it in mind that while we are doing all of these things, how do we really keep organizations' digital strategy? And it is very vital to identify what sources of business value are critical to drive cloud adoption. It's important for us to understand there's a strong connection between the triggers and the business value drivers. That is for which the cloud is deployed in the first place. And we should not miss this particular point, because otherwise the adoption of cloud could effectively mean an organization paying more for a cloud offering rather than otherwise. And we offer this kind of things to customers as a consulting so that they do know that as to when they're jumping into a cloud, it is for a long run basis. And you're doing that keeping in mind the organization's digital strategy.
Now, if I'm a chairman of a board, of a large company, or I'm a CEO of a large company that is perhaps behind the curve in terms of my digital transformation. We are, in your terms, on your study, not a digital native. We were probably cloud out onlookers before, and now we're sort of becoming cloud pragmatists, and we're starting to experiment. What is a checklist that we should be using in order to start our journey and take us to the point where we are cloud optimizers and digital natives?
I would get started, Brian, with the business landscape. What is the business landscape as an organization that you are really putting across the technology for use? Keeping that in the front and center is going to be very key. And then building a digital strategy around it is going to be very key. One of the things that we usually miss out is that we do not take into consideration that what are some of the impediments that could come across in adoption of any technology. And come to think of it, the number one that we have always seen, and it also talks about in that particular report, is the workforce. The ability of the workforce to really jump into and be able to get themselves skilled and be able to carry out the job. And that is something which I would always consult my customers and partners, that keep that in the forefront. Because let's not forget that machines or technology is becoming intelligent, but at the same point of time, we need to bring across the decision-making power and the sensitivity, and that comes from people.
And Bidhan, that's really where sometimes companies underinvest in. They buy the technology, but they don't invest in the change management element of implementation. And that's where the technology project doesn't succeed.
Yeah, it is. And few of the things that come to my mind, what you just talked about, is in terms of that really thinking through those 22 yards before charting it out. An organization who have done it successfully, as some of them who have really thought through as to what's my current state and where do I want to go. It's understanding the as is and to be is very critical. Understanding what my future plans are for scaling the business is very, very critical. The second thing is the third thing that we tend to miss many times is that what's my business continuity planning? What happens if there are certain things that just do not go as per plan? And the last one, which you touched upon, which is about the culture, which is specifically around tech readiness, and the speed of adoption is directly proportional as to how we want to drive across a culture that adopts technology.
Bidhan, across the region, as you manage your organizations, which sectors have you seen the greatest transformation in terms of their digital strategy and adoption?
You know what, Brian, thanks for asking me this question, because this is something which usually comes up in many sessions that I do attend. And one of the things that come to my mind is that the pandemic has been a big leveler, because the way multiple industries, segments, territories, markets, the way they have embraced technology is very similar. Earlier on, if FSI would be consuming a lot more technology comparatively to manufacturing, education was a little bit, there was hardly any online education in some of the markets in Asia Pacific. But the way it has gone now is that everybody has really gone ahead. But having said that, some verticals really stand out, which I was talking in the beginning of our conversation, was about retail. The way they have completely tossed it up on its head, that whole industry. It has really created a rift between the haves and the have-nots. The other thing that has really undergone significant changes, as we all know, which is education. The way every other, be it a school or an institution or a tuition center or a coaching center, everybody has absolutely embraced, because we just could not get out. And I think a lot of that particular thing is going to continue. It's not going to go away. Now, what we are going to do next is going to be key to success, because how do we really continue and sustain that momentum without compromising the security is going to be key to success for any of these verticals.
Now, Bidhan, looking ahead now, we've undergone this tremendous period of accelerated digital transformation. What are the key trends that you see at Cisco that organizations could take advantage of?
So as I was talking about, like those trends, seriously have been existing since quite some time. But these trends, if you would remember, like overnight, they got accelerated due to pandemic.
Yes.
The trends about that applications were always critical to FFSI industry. It was probably not as critical to a manufacturing, but they have just been heightened by the pandemic. People are really concerned about that, how some of these technology or applications, as we call it, been delivered, consumed. How do companies build a relationship between their brand and the customers? I always engage with customers, and today one of the top things in their mind is that how do we provide a consistency in customer service between physical and online? A good example of it is that I'm sure you'll be banking with some of the big banks in the region. How is that experience of a bank A is exactly the same when you are digitally or online doing a transaction with them versus when you probably need to walk into to do a branch banking. Now, customers have started demanding this because they want a absolutely single pane of view or a consistency in approach. Now, there's a few things that's coming up to the forefront. I would just like to talk about security. That is another thing that's front and center of everyone. We all know the kind of attacks that everyone has gone through it. The good part of it is that close to, and this is another study that we did, which is close to a year back, wherein it showed that around 70% of enterprises in Asia Pacific, Japan, and China have set aside a higher budget to spend on cyber security, threat defenses, and various other security solutions. I think there's a lot that's going on with given the situation, given the urgency of the fact that's there, but there's a lot more to do on cybersecurity, especially.
Bidhan, it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much for coming on the show. But before we leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
The only thing that I would really talk about is that we definitely need to think about not just the technology piece. Technology is not just becoming intelligent, it's becoming sensitive too. And we need to drive a culture that how we can adopt it. There are small little things that goes a long way, especially in terms of employee experience or customer experiences. There are technologies today that's available around which will really help you drive that agenda. Some of the things, if I could just give across a last sales plug, is that there are collaboration technologies which really makes you more sensitive. Like this noise cancellation. Just before getting onto this particular call, you asked me that particular question. Now that's available as a technology because all of us working from home, we do need to be sensitive about the fact that there will be surrounding noises that's going on. If that is that's a feature that can be tackled by technology, then amazing. The other one is a gesture. So we need to really bring across those sensitivities as we build on, and that's going to go a long way with our both employee experiences and customer experiences.
Bidhan, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we've been speaking to Bidhan Roy, Managing Director, Commercial Enterprise and Mid-Market Segment, APJC at Cisco, on Biztech's Enterprise Technology Show. I'm Brian Fernandez. This video will be on our Facebook and LinkedIn sites, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thanks a lot for tuning in.